Were Romeo and Juliet real? What's up, smarty people? It's KeysDAN, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. This is What Makes You Smarter. William Shakespeare's timeless tragedy, Romeo and Juliet, first appeared in print in 1597. The play's famous prologue presents a compelling tale about a pair of star-crossed lovers who take their life because of an ancient grudge between their households. It's a captivating story of forbidden love that endures as one of the Bard's most popular plays, inspiring countless iterations in theater and film. The story centers around the love-struck Romeo and the beautiful Juliet, two of the most famous characters in popular culture to this day. But were these young lovers based on real people? The Capulets and Montagues may be based on real families, though historians generally agree that Juliet Capulet and Romeo Montague were fictional characters. It's possible that their feuding houses were based on real families in Verona, Italy, where Shakespeare set his famous tragedy. Today, travelers to Verona can visit landmarks around the city that may have inspired the playwright and his predecessors, including two residences built as the Montague and Capulet homes, as well as Juliet's tomb at the Franciscan monastery outside Verona. The veracity of these claims varies, however. While the monastery has been identified as the setting referenced in the final act of Shakespeare's play, the tomb is a symbolic representation of the fictional Juliet's burial place. The site, now known as La Casa di Giulietta, Juliet's house, meanwhile, is a 13th century home that belonged to the Dal Capello, commonly known as Capuletti family, who some historians believe may have inspired Shakespeare's Capulets. In fact, the bard borrowed the names of his two households from Dante's Divine Comedy, an Italian narrative poem composed in the early 14th century. Dante's poem is one of the earliest texts to reference the Montecchi and Capuletti families, Italian equivalents for the names Montagues and Capulets, who were real-life rival political factions in the 13th century. But where did the characters Romeo and Juliet come from? Understanding Shakespeare starts with understanding that the playwright was adept at taking existing stories and spinning them into his own work for the theater. Sometimes the bard even borrowed characters' names. The titular names in Romeo and Juliet also have Italian roots, first appearing in Italian writer Luigi da Porto's tale, Giulietta e Romeo. In his novel, Historia Novelmente Ritrovata di Nobili Amante, a newly discovered history of two noble lovers, published in 1531, Da Porto's work enjoyed widespread popularity in Europe long before Shakespeare penned his play. Da Porto himself took inspiration from 15th century Italian poet Masuccio Salernitano, who included a similar tragic love story in his 50-story collection, Il Novellino, published in 1476. His story of Marlato e Gioganza of Siena, a city around 200 miles from Verona, is considered the earliest known version of the Romeo and Juliet tale, and the source material for Da Porto's Giulietta e Romeo. Salernitano's version includes a secret marriage and a sleeping potion, but many other details differ from the familiar Shakespearean tale, and the lovers die by different means. Shakespeare didn't create the star-crossed lovers trope. The framework for Romeo and Juliet also didn't originate with Shakespeare. It's a plot that is almost certainly as old as storytelling itself. Ovid's Metamorphoses, published in 8 CE, contains the oldest surviving version of the familiar plot. But even the Roman poet was inspired by other myths. In Ovid's tale, Paramus and Thisbe are a pair of Babylonian lovers whose parents forbid them to marry. When the couple sneaks off to meet near a mulberry tree, Thisbe is frightened by a lion and flees, leaving her cloak behind. Paramus finds the cloak and, believing his love has been killed, falls on his sword. When Thisbe finds his body, she then takes her own life with the same sword. Ovid's timeless tale of doomed lovers may have inspired other writers to take a metaphorical stab at their own tragic love stories. Shakespeare was certainly aware of the story of Paramus and Thisbe. His play, A Midsummer Night's Dream, written around the same time as Romeo and Juliet, includes a play within a play involving a group of amateur actors known as the Rude Mechanicals, who perform a version of Ovid's tale. But despite this homage, tracing the connection between Ovid and Romeo and Juliet is not a straight line. Shakespeare's inspiration likely came from a variety of sources and motifs used by other writers, including English poet Arthur Brooks' 1562 narrative poem, The Tragical History of Romeus and Juliet. That poem was itself based on the French translation of a story an Italian writer, Matteo Bandello's novelle, Stories, and influenced by Geoffrey Chaucer's 14th century epic poem, Troilus and Cresside. Shakespeare's play incorporates changes Brooke made to Bandello's version of the lover's tale, leading scholars to believe that Brooke's poem was Shakespeare's main source of inspiration. Well, there's a little bit about Romeo and Juliet and William Shakespeare, the immortal bard. What do you think about that? Where do you get your inspiration? This has been What Makes You Smarter. Stick around for more. It's KeysDAN, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here.